Want a cookie? Oh, I know you just ate, so you're craving something a little sweet. Besides, one cookie isn't gonna kill you. How about half? Just a bite? Bite it. Bite it. Bite it.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. Your affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on a path to successful weight loss by quieting food noise.
Bite it.
Shh. Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast, a space to pause, breathe, and come back to yourself, even in the middle of a full and busy life. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and in each episode, we explore mindfulness for real life, simple practices, reflections, tools to help you feel grounded, present, and connected to what matters most to you. So let's settle in and let's get centered. Welcome back to the Center in the City podcast. I'm your host, Wade Brill, and I am so glad you are here. In the solo episode, we're exploring how wearables, health technology like the Oura Ring or a continuous glucose monitor, these have been two wearables that I have personally been testing, how they can support your mindfulness and stress management and overall well-being without spiraling you out. So if you are somebody who has a wearable and notices your stress or anxiety has increased since having one, or if you wanted to get a wearable, but you haven't wanted to get one because you're afraid it's going to increase your anxiety, this episode will help you turn your awareness into aligned action and help you feel empowered by technology instead of a victim to it. Because there's so many of us who look at our Oura Ring score or who look at our health score on our Apple phone or our glucose monitor and instantly feel like we're either getting an A+, a score that we're doing completely great, or we're getting a score that we're failing. I'm going to share with you my personal experience with these wearables and ways that I am also practicing being in relationship to technology in a helpful way. So wherever you are listening to this episode, whether you're on a walk, commuting, cooking dinner, I welcome you to settle in and let's get centered. I used to be anti-wearables for the longest time. And it's very ironic because I am one of the first people I know in my generation who wore a pedometer when it was the size of a beeper back in the day. And one of the reasons that I became very anti-wearables is that I started to notice that even me wearing a pedometer back in high school, I would outsource my knowledge that I walked enough if I hit 10,000 steps. I would look to data to tell me what my body is actually wanting to tell me. Did I walk enough? And the funny thing is that our body feels differently and needs different things most days. Yes, it needs the basics like food and rest and hydration. But some days it needs to walk more, run more, sweat more, and some days it needs to rest more. It needs to stretch, it needs to dance, it needs to play. And one of the things that makes us humans separate from a lot of other mammals is our brain and our ability to discern what our body is actually telling us. Now, we all get curious about wearables for different reasons. I started getting curious about getting an Oura Ring for a few reasons. One, I had a lot of clients who had an Oura Ring, and they would tell me that the Oura Ring is telling them that they're stressed all the time. And so they were wanting to understand what could they do to help them manage their stress. So it got me curious, like, what would my body say my stress is like? What would wearing this wearable, what information would it give me? And then the second reason I wanted to get an Oura Ring was because I was biking a lot more. And I was using biking and walking as my main commute around Seattle. And I was curious, like, when I'm biking up these monster hills, what is my heart rate actually going to? And I just wanted to understand more of my heart rate in these moments of fitness. And then the third reason I wanted to get an Oura Ring was because I was curious what my basal body temp is for contraceptive purposes. So those were some of the reasons why for a few years I was thinking about the Oura Ring. And I didn't say yes to it until a few months ago. So I've been wearing the Oura Ring for about 4 months now. And I want to share with you some of my takeaways and also how, if you use an Oura Ring or if you have an Apple Watch or if you have a different type of wearable, how to be in relationship with the data in a more skillful way. So some of the things that I see people do with wearables is that they check their wearables to let them know if they are doing enough, right? Did I get the best sleep? Did I hit my fitness goals? What's happening with my body temperature right now? They want the feedback and they want the biometrics to understand their body and how can they be using their body optimally. And this is one of my biggest beefs with wearables is that we start to outsource our knowledge to these devices instead of tightening our mind-body connection to actually listening. We start to outsource our own wisdom to these devices. Now, as somebody who felt this way strongly before getting a wearable, I was curious how I would feel, 4 months in, 1 month into wearing a wearable. And at first, it was so fun. It was so fun to check. It was so fun to notice, did it pick up on my walk I just took or on that Pilates class I just did? And it was fun to get the feedback of how many calories is it actually saying I'm burning? Or how high did my heart get? Or how long did it say I was moving for? Or what's my wearable telling me about my sleep last night? Was it a deep sleep? Was it a good sleep? Did I get a high sleep score? Am I doing a good job? Right? Like all of these things I started to think about. And what I noticed is that I slowly started to check my Oura Ring more and more because I was looking for that external feedback. I was looking for that sense of something outside of me to tell me I accomplished the goal or I, hit my fitness goal for the day or that I did a good job or that I might need to be doing more. Like I looked for something externally and I started to notice that within me. And it actually was decreasing my own awareness of, body, did you walk enough today? Do you feel like taking another walk or are you tired? Like I stopped doing that. And that made me start to think if I stopped doing that, if I was doing this practice before wearing a wearable, like checking with my body, asking what it needed, asking what it wanted, and now I stopped doing that as often because I was outsourcing it to a wearable, that might feel that's the point, Wade. You're freeing up your mental load so that this wearable can tell you what you need to do and you don't need to think about it. But this is my issue, my beef with technology, is when it starts to take us more out of our inner nature, when it starts to disconnect us more and more from our body so that we can be these quote unquote more efficient robots. But it brings me to this point of even with AI, it's the more we're outsourcing, the more quote unquote free time we're going to have, right? And so then that question is, well, what are we going to do with our free time or with our free mental space? Where do you want that attention to go? And for me, I want that attention to be more deeply connected to my body, to my intuition, to my inner knowing, so that I can feel more connected as a human in relationship to others, to feel more human in my body so I can feel grounded as I'm walking through the city, as I'm looking up at trees, as I'm looking up at the stars. I want to feel more present. And sometimes, and I would say a majority of times, technology takes me out of being present, of feeling more connected. So since I started to notice this pattern of feeling more disconnected from my body, it inspired me to think about, okay, then how do I want to be in relationship to this Oura Ring? How do I want to be in relationship to this technology? And what it inspired me to do is that instead of checking my app multiple times a day, I grant myself permission to check the app twice a day. So I can check the app once in the morning after I wake up, after I meditate. Like I try not to touch my phone for at least the first 30 to 45 minutes of the morning. And then I can check it to check how much I slept or what my sleeping score was, if that's important to me. And then I can check the app again towards the end of the day. So I usually look at it again around 6, 7 o'clock after I finish a work day. And I come back to my intention for getting the wearable. So one, I don't really find the stress or relaxed data on the app or even resiliency data on the app very helpful. It doesn't really give me much information. And it even will catch something where I maybe had elevated cortisol because I was excited or I felt really alive in that moment. It wasn't necessarily bad stress. And yet, I think when we see stress in the app, we're automatically assuming that cortisol was being released and there was an elevation and it might have been bad stress. And so I'm here to remind us that maybe it was also good stress. And I'm also here to remind us that having our stress spike and come down throughout the day is really normal. And that's what we want, right? We're going to have a days full of increased and decreased stress. We obviously don't want to be living a life where we're elevated at stress the whole day, all day, and not having moments of rest and recovery. But what I've heard from some clients is that when they see just the fact that they are stressed a majority of the day, or that that area of the app turns pink and red, it already sends like an alarm system to their brain that something's wrong, that they're harming their body because their body was stressed most of the day. And so I'm here to remind you that if you're getting that signal from your wearable, whether it's an Oura Ring or something else, that this data gets to be information. It doesn't have to tell the story for you. So can you be empowered by the information? Actually check in and say, was I really stressed? What stressed me out? Was it eustress, right? This increase in some positive short-term good stress that's motivating us, that's manageable. Maybe it helps us perform. Or was there more distress actually happening in the body where we're feeling overwhelmed, where we're feeling maybe more anxious, where we're feeling like it's actually decreasing our ability to show up, that it's feeling heavier or even harmful for our long-term health? So don't let these labels define you. Let them be there to inspire you and support you getting curious to know your body and mind and heart more. And if you're noticing like, I don't actually do that work, I'm just letting, again, the app tell me my score, whether I'm good, bad, need improvement, whatever it is, versus getting curious. Because again, that's the key. Can you learn more about your body? Can you use this technology to learn more instead of outsourcing? So the other night, for instance, I did not have a good night's sleep. My husband was sick, and so he was, rolling around, sniffling, and so my sleep was light. It was interrupted. And I could tell in the morning when I got up, before even looking at my app, that I did not have a fully restful sleep. And so then I look at my app and I see my score and I notice, interesting, that's giving me that score. And then I look and see, did it actually track the times that I woke up throughout the night? And I looked at that to get more curious, to think about, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. It's showing that I was in light sleep most of the night. And that's something that I felt. So that's validating, right? Or it's showing me that only a percentage of my sleep was in the deeper REM state. So it gave me some more detailed information to help me connect to what I already felt instead of me opening the app first and letting it say, oh, you got a score of 74 and this is why, and then breaking it down. We have to remember that the mind is really good at meaning making. So if it sees the data and it sees numbers and it sees all these things, it's really good at then creating extra stories. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to use the data lightly and let it to support our internal curiosity and us getting to know ourselves more versus letting it define us. I have a friend who uses the Oura Ring who is really motivated by her sleep score. And for her, it's helped her be more intentional with having better sleep hygiene. So, for instance, she thinks about winding down before going to bed. She thinks about putting her phone away before going to sleep. She's really tried to make these little tweaks to her evening rituals so that she's enhancing her sleep score. And it's helped her. It's helped her be more intentional with a habit so that she then can feel more restful. However, she's not letting the data run her. Instead, she's letting it motivate her. And there's, I think, a really fine line of where that can happen for people, where she can feel like, oh, I need to get a good night's sleep. I need to get a good score. So I need to do all these things in order to prepare so I can get that good score. Versus, hey, I know what having a good sleep score is. I know what that feels like now. And so let me be intentional about what I can do to prepare myself at night so that I can set myself up for the best sleep possible. I personally noticed, I want to say the first night or two of having the Oura Ring, I think it was even the first night, I was like, oh, I better get a good night's sleep. I better get a good score so that I'm starting to train this Oura Ring. Like I literally had that conversation. And guess what? It backfired because I did not have a good night's sleep that first night because I was totally spiraling myself out in trying to impress this technology gadget that is on my ring finger. And I laugh at myself when telling this story because I know I'm not alone in having that relationship to technology, in that dopamine reward loop. And that's where we can get in trouble, is like we start to outsource more of our power, more of our sense of wholeness and enoughness to something outside of us. And yet we do that enough already. So this is why I wanted to record this episode, was to empower you, to empower me, to stay grounded in our own minds, hearts, and bodies as we engage with this technology. One of the things I love about the Oura Ring, two things actually that I've been really enjoying, and these are aspects that would be harder for me to tap into my own knowledge. But when I play tennis with my husband, or if I'm biking, or if I do a little dance class or an exercise class, it's curious to me where my heart rate is going. And that never used to be something of interest until in the last year, until I really started biking everywhere, as I mentioned. I was really curious to see, like, how hard am I pushing my body? And now it's interesting to know, when am I in zone 1? When am I in zone 2? When am I in zone 3, 4, 5? These different cardio zones are helpful in understanding how am I training my body in different ways. And training the body in different ways is really helpful, right? That makes the muscles in our body, our heart, all the different muscles in our body, our lungs, thinking about how hard and different we're training them. So zone 1 is like very light. It's kind of more of a warm up or cool down zone, more of recovery. Zone 2 is where we're in quote unquote fat burning zones. We're building more aerobic capacity. This is where endurance can be built when we're in zone 2 for a sustainable long time. Zone 3 is where things get a little spicier and you're starting to increase your cardiovascular fitness and your lung capacity, and you start to get more comfortable with a challenging pace or increase in heart rate. Zone 4 is when you are in a hard space. There's increase in speed, efficiency, there's lactic threshold that's happening. And zone 5 is where you're in like very high intensity and you want to maybe hit zone 5 for these short bursts, for these explosive like hit moments. Now, I'm not a personal trainer in this regard, and I am also not your doctor, so this is not medical advice, but exploring these different zones are helpful to think about how you're using your body, your energy, strengthening your muscles, as I mentioned, and supporting your overall metabolic health. So I've really been loving learning about how I'm using my body efficiently or effectively when it comes to my heart rate zone. I have also been loving paying attention to my body's basal temp, because that is something it's so small of difference, whether it's like 0.5 increase or 1 point increase or decrease, depending on where you are as a woman in your menstrual cycle. And that is something that I have had no mind-body connection to. Yes, I've noticed and have been able to map my symptoms of, before I go into my menstrual cycle, recognizing my body typically gets hotter. I might have hot flashes. And that is like an instance of like, oh, my body is starting to change and go into that cycle. But learning about the basal temp and where and how that correlates to the different cycle has been very interesting. The next wearable I want to talk about is a continuous glucose monitor. So I used Lingo, which is a continuous glucose monitor. It has its own app. Sadly, it is not the one that connects to the Oura Ring, so I can't speak for how they would have collaborated if I was to use the one that the Oura Ring links to. I was inspired to get a continuous glucose monitor because I wanted to understand my blood sugar and how it was relating to my hormones in a way that my mindfulness practice can't help me, right? I can't fully bring my awareness to my blood sugar in these subtle ways like a continuous glucose monitor can. And maybe one day I'll be able to have that mind-body connection, but I don't have that kind of mind-body connection now. So I wanted to have this scientific continuous glucose monitor to use to help me think about how does my body respond to different foods and how can that support my hormones stabilizing. So I reached out to a friend who I know has a wearable, a continuous glucose monitor, and she recommended Lingo. And Lingo came in a box. It kind of looked like a big stamp, and you find a spot in the back of your arm, something that is typically out of the way, and you give yourself a stamp, and that injects this glucose monitor through a little needle into your arm. And at first, I thought it was going to hurt, but it did not hurt whatsoever. I thought it might even feel like a small pinch, but nothing. And within an hour, you are able to link what's happening in your body to what's happening in the Lingo app. Now, again, I want to preface this with this is not medical advice. This is sharing my own personal experience. And this is also something I feel like I'm still really curious to learn more and more about, because there's so much here, understanding your blood sugar and how it relates to your hormones that really affects all areas of your life. Also, your body is so specific. It is your body. So how I'm going to share food affected my body is probably very different than how it would or does affect your body. And this is one of the cool things about getting a glucose monitor, is that you start to gain this unique data versus what all of these different influencers or experts are telling you should be doing. You're starting to learn for yourself. So the glucose monitor lasts for 2 weeks, and then you take it out of your arm. Now, during this 2-week stint, I sort of tried to be as scientific as I could to a certain point. And then it also happened to be happening while my husband and I were moving, and a lot of stress and change was happening. So I'm curious to do it again, but I gained some really important insights that I'm excited to share with you. So the first few days, I tried to eat normally. I tried to eat how I would eat normally so that I could just track what is my natural blood glucose doing when I'm eating what I normally eat. Now, I am not somebody who has diabetes in my family or a strong genetic disposition. However, there was maybe a hunch of, am I insulin resistant? And so I was curious to understand, how is my body responding, or where is it spike, or what's kind of happening? Now, I am somebody who feels very passionate about intuitive and mindful eating, about listening to what the body needs and is hungry for. And I'll circle back to this point in a moment. What I started to recognize over these first few days is that I would have these big shaded areas, what they call shading in blood glucose monitor language, where my blood sugar would stay elevated for a longer period of time without coming down. And I started to see this like shaded area happening in the mornings and happening at night after I'd stopped eating. And I was like, what is happening here? And it started to kind of create a little panic and anxiety. Within the Lingo app, they have this like daily goal to stay below maybe 60 points or 30 points, or however your goal is set. And I'm not even clear on how the app sets your daily goal. But if you have a large amount of what they call shaded area where your blood sugar doesn't come back down, they count that time period towards your Lingo daily count. And so that even started to create panic for me of like, oh my God, my Lingo daily count is getting higher. Like, what's happening? This is not good. And it actually brought me to a place where I started to become afraid to eat. Like, I started to notice I was scared to do something that might be harmful for my body. I also started to have something that they call the dawn effect, which is noticing that your blood sugar spikes in the morning and then your blood sugar spikes in the evening after you eat. So this data, this wearable data that I started to get, was good in a sense. It was giving me information that my doctor can't give me when I go in for blood tests, once, twice a year. It's giving me something that's helping paint a larger picture. It's empowering me to understand how my body specifically relates to different foods and times of foods and stress and sleep and all the things that impact our health and well-being. So this data was great, right? It empowered me to make a few changes that I'm going to talk about in a few moments. However, it also spiraled my anxiety, and it took me out of a place where I actually felt empowered in my health. And that's where I want to support you in slowing down to be able to use this information as information to empower choices instead of create freeze or a sense of panic. So when I started to notice like these shaded areas or the dawn effect happening or my Lingo count raising, it helped me research what to do. And without speaking to somebody specifically, I'd say there's just a lot of information out there to sift through. So I highly recommend like working with a hormone specialist or talking to your doctor. Helping somebody understand your data, I think, is really empowering. What I thought was interesting, before I even put on my wearable, my continuous glucose monitor, I started to notice my body craving more meat. Now, for those that don't know, I eat primarily vegetarian. My body loves vegetables. It loves beans. It's very happy eating a lot of beans and rice and quinoa and roasted vegetables and salads. And of course, pastries and chocolate is in there too. However, about a week prior to getting the glucose monitor, I started craving more meat. And it wasn't that I didn't eat meat, I just maybe had it a few times a week. I would hardly buy it at the grocery store to cook at home, but I was like starting to crave it, buying chicken and lamb and like just needing it. So one of the shifts that I made by having this glucose monitor was I recognized when I eat more animal protein, my blood sugar stays lower and more stable for longer. And I learned that legumes and rice and even quinoa spike my blood sugar more. What I also started to learn was I wasn't eating enough protein for breakfast. So I was somebody who would wake up not always super hungry and maybe just start the day with like a half a banana and peanut butter because I wanted to have something in my system before having coffee. And then maybe later would make some toast or maybe make a smoothie or maybe make some eggs or just intuitively listen to what I was wanting. But ever since wearing the glucose monitor and seeing this dawn effect that was happening in the morning, I started to have more protein in my morning, trying to aim for 20 to 30 grams of protein in the morning to help start my day. And that helped kick the dawn effect from my system. So now my mornings, I'm having like multiple eggs, like 4 eggs, which feels like so much for me. I should say used to feel like so much for me. Somebody who would maybe make 2 eggs for myself, max, typically 1 egg, was now I'm trying to eat like 4 to 5 eggs. And believe me, I'm like curious about my cholesterol because my cholesterol is already genetically high. Or I'm having yogurt and adding protein powder, and I'm obsessed with this Tajari protein powder that my cousin turned me onto. It's I believe the vanilla flavor, and it just has extra pea protein in it that I will add to yogurt or maybe just mix into almond milk or chia seeds and support me having more fiber and protein in the morning. And since adding more protein into my diet, I have noticed that it's actually helped me feel more satiated and less snacky. Like I used to love kind of feeling like I'd finish a meal still hungry so that I could snack a little bit. But now if I'm having more protein or enough protein, I feel satiated. So that desire to snack is not there. And that actually feels way better than it did before. So when it comes to wearing continuous glucose monitor, I don't want to have it all of the time. I had it for 2 weeks and then took it out. And now my plan is to make these small tweaks, these intentions of adding more animal protein into my diet, of having more protein for my breakfast, of being mindful of, again, snacking, noticing what's spiking my blood sugar. I know there's a lot of research out there that having fiber, having your vegetables, having salad, having vinegar before having protein in your carbohydrates is really important. Like the order in which you eat can be very helpful in stabilizing your blood sugar. But for me, I haven't even gotten to that specific type of feedback from my blood glucose monitor. Instead, what I'm trying to practice right now is just having more of this protein into my diet. And then we'll see in a few months when I head back to the States, I'll take my blood glucose monitor back in and notice what maybe shifts have happened. This type of feedback allowed me to now feel empowered. It spun me out at first, but I took that sense of awareness and I even went to the doctor to get some more information to notice, am I insulin resistant? Am I pre-diabetic here? To understand what this information meant. And then it supported me making some small tweaks to my diet, which I'm already noticing the huge impact on and how it's supporting me with my hormones. Now, personally, if I'm somebody that didn't have to wear a monitor, I don't think I would have it all of the time. I know it can be really empowering information to have at your fingertips, like, how did my body respond to that meal? But I even noticed for having it for 2 weeks that I was checking it all of the time. And even checking it, after I'd have a meal, I'd go on a walk. And after I'd have that walk, how did that affect my blood sugar? And learning those things were very interesting. It was very interesting, but I noticed it became sometimes unhealthy. And so that for you is your own discernment point of where does your own wearable help you and where does it hurt you? And how do you want to be in relationship to it, hopefully in a way that's going to support you and not hold you back? So for me, after my 2 weeks with the glucose monitor, I said, thank you. I so appreciate you. You've helped me gain awareness about my body in a way I never would have been able to. And I don't need you right now. Doesn't mean I won't come back to you, but it means I don't need you right now because I don't want to feel controlled by it. I don't want to take the pleasure out of eating and nourishing my body. That was something that you could say, blind eye, like ignorance is bliss. And there's some truth to that. But I now have awareness that I can't be ignorant to how a chocolate bar might respond to my body, or how eating a hamburger might respond to my body, or having rice and beans, how that might respond to my body. And even if it spiked my blood sugar one day, it might not spike my blood sugar the next day because of whatever else I've eaten or how much sleep or hydration I've had. So there's so many factors that also go into our health. As we wind down this episode, I welcome you to pause with me here and take a moment to think about your relationship to your wearables. Come back to your intention. Why did you invest in your wearable? Was it given to you? Did you just get it because everybody else got it? Or was there a real intention? Like you wanted to track your sleep. You wanted to understand your sleep. You wanted to understand your heart rate. You wanted to improve your overall health. You wanted to support yourself moving more. Whatever it is, come back to your intention. And then ask yourself, how are you in relationship to the data that you're receiving from these wearables? Where is it helpful and where is it hurtful? And with the areas that it's hurtful, what boundaries do you want to set, or how do you want to adjust so that you're not feeling controlled or harmed by this data? And how do you want to use this data that you're gaining to actually empower and support your life? So you're not just wearing it to track it, but you're actually using it to support you making wiser choices for your mind, body, and heart. I since have had clients take off their wearables because they recognize it was just not helping them. It was not improving their life. It was not supporting them in a way that actually felt empowering. And they realized that just tapping into their own intuition and their own sense of, did I sleep well enough? Or do I need more rest today? Or do I need more movement? Was all of the information they actually needed. And if you're thinking about setting boundaries with your wearables, get clear. Do you want to set specific times where you look at the apps, specific times where you want to wear the wearable or want to take it off, or where you give it Bluetooth access, or however you want it to look? Remind yourself that you are in control. And this is where you come back to a centered place. When you remind yourself that you get to be in charge of how you want to relate to the data, to the stories, to all the meaning making that is happening. You get to be empowered by the information. You get to make choices that can help you in your life. I would love to hear from you how this episode is landing, resonating, what you're learning, what's coming alive for you, what wearables you even enjoy using, or how you like to use yours, or what boundaries you use with your wearables. Reach out to me on Instagram at OneWade. Drop me a message linked in the show notes. Let's support each other, feeling empowered by our health instead of more stressed and anxious by it. Thank you, as always, for letting me into your ears, your heart, your mind. I so appreciate you listening to this podcast. And I welcome you to share this episode with somebody in your life that you know needs and wants to hear it. Somebody who maybe is managing their own anxiety around the wearables, or somebody who's curious to actually invest in a wearable. Until next time, stay centered.